Hello, welcome to NACADA. This is Less is More, minimalizing all the clutter and prioritizing what matters in advising. Presented by Todd Spinner, Academic Advisor at the School of Chemical Sciences at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. You can contact me at spinner@illinois.edu or toddspinner.com, where I have a lot of resources on minimalism, advising, and tech and higher education, etc. Wish you all could be in Cincinnati with us once the conference begins, but hopefully this will help you get a flavor of this presentation, and there's many other ones that I'm sure are doing the same thing. I want to talk a little bit about myself. I've been in higher education since 1995, basically never left college after I graduated in 95. I've worked at Eastern Illinois University, St. Michael's College in Vermont, Adrian College in Michigan, DePaul University in Indiana, and the University of Illinois. I have worked in residence life and housing, financial aid, little judicial affairs in there. I've basically been an advisor for 14 plus years now, and 11 of them at the School of Chemical Sciences. If you want to contact me or work with me in Twitter or Instagram, their stuff is on there as well. Let's talk about learning objectives. We're going to discuss how the pressure to do more with less is pushing us advisors to become more overwhelmed, stressed, burned out, and less effective. We're going to introduce the concept of less is more through the philosophy of minimalism and essentialism. We're going to look at modern minimalist literature and how that can lead to advisors making better decisions and assisting in leading a purposeful life based on values. We're going to discuss strategies that advisors can use to implement to lead a meaningful, purpose-driven life, as well as concepts that can be taught to students. Let's talk a little bit about advising tasks and what we actually do as advisors. And normally this is where I would ask the people who are at the presentation about what kind of tasks they do. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to come up with some of them since you all are not able to respond. But what are some of the advising roles and what some of the roles you do as advisors? And as you start thinking of this and internalize some of this, how much stuff are you doing? Sure, we're meeting with students. Sure, we're meeting and working and planning out their curriculums, planning out their courses. We're working and helping them with study skills. We're helping them navigate the university. We are helping them with resources. We're getting them involved in co-ops and internships. We're doing career stuff with them. We're doing all kinds of different kinds of roles that normally you would look at with an academic advisor. We're also, a lot of us are working on planning graduation and coordinating graduation. We're working on, a lot of us are people who have to be course planners, and we have to set up the course schedule. A lot of us are working with faculty. We have just many hats that we're wearing as academic advisors. We're also now being pushed to, at least in my job, are being pushed to help recruit students, meet with incoming prospective students. We've been designing brochures and different kinds of media for folks. Some of us are working on our newsletters that go out to students, etc. So we have many hats that we're wearing. And unfortunately, more and more of those tasks are being given to academic advisors. What are some of the additional roles and responsibilities that we may have chosen to take on? And this could mean, it could involve, being involved in committee work on campus, like what I was doing with the Council on Academic Professionals, representing, my colleagues. Could be going to conferences, could be presenting at conferences, doing writing, a lot of great things, but we keep adding on stuff. Maybe some of us are going for a doctorate degree or a master's degree. So we're continuing to add on more stuff. Some of us are actually doing things like taking classes through like some methods like Coursera or LinkedIn, things like that. So all kinds of different things we're adding on to responsibilities for ourselves. So I want to talk a little bit about my story and where I come at through minimalism. Let me start off by saying I'm not a minimalist, and anybody who's met me or gone to my house will say, oh, this is not a minimalist house. My parents were lovely people, are lovely people. But they tend to lead more to the hoarder side of things. We're not talking about the hoarders program with the rats and feces everywhere on TV, but our family doesn't like to visit there anymore because there's too much stuff. I grew up basically in a culture, in a family, largely owing to my dad's side of the family, which was a hardworking farm family, Central Illinois. And the Great Depression really kind of shaped that family and the stuff that my family does. It impacted my father a lot, who was born in 1946. The Depression never really ended in World War II for a lot of farm families. The need to collect and hoard things during good times and bad times is well ingrained in my family and maybe yours. This is the kind of stuff I come from. On a personal note, please note that we do not want our parents' stuff. I know that'll keep coming up, but our parents are, oh, we'll save this for you. No, please don't. In August of 2014, I had two great colleagues. I was vice chair of the Council of Academic Professionals. I was chair of ILIAC, which is the local organization under the state organization under NACADA, which is the local advising group on campus. I also owned a small 5-acre farm in rural Indiana, in addition to my house in Champaign. Life was good. In less than 3 months, both my colleagues resigned. I lost both of my colleagues, and I was one advisor for 1,300 students. I had almost 3,000 in-person advising meetings for the 14-15 academic year, and a bulk of those were in the fall. Let me tell you, those were not the best, most in-depth advising meetings. I had to train new staff in complex curriculums. Burnout, I'm not sure I realized burnout at the time. I did have to resign from the vice chair of CAP in November of 14, just too much to do. And in the fall of 2015, I started to teach a STEM study skills course, and started to teach about minimalism to my students in class, but with more of a sustainability bent. So I was adding more stuff onto my load. I did sell my farm in Indiana that fall as well. Just got to be too much to hang out there. In fall of 2016, I taught 2 courses. So just keep loading more stuff on. Still advising 500 students. Only taught 1 course in the fall of 2017, so I'm getting a little bit better. I did resign from CAP that fall, again, still trying to reduce my load, but I ended up presenting at NACADA, one of my lifelong goals. Then one of my coworkers left, another was out for an extended time, and I was alone again in January of 2018 for about a month, advising the entire school. Some time ago, I was walking to the drinking fountain, and my boss said that I looked busy and stressed. That was interesting, since I was getting ready to do a presentation on minimalism and essentialism. Too many choices, like the paint colors at Lowe's, too much social pressure, the idea of having it all, burnout, jumping from task to task, not always finishing them. Does that sound familiar? I had started to wear busy like a badge of honor. I'd become the glorification of the busy. I was busy, but not always effective, and definitely not efficient. Small progress at times, baby steps. Spring 2020, COVID hits. I, along with other advisors, have more to do on Zoom from home. More pressure to produce, more pressure to put everything online all at once. Put it this way, I'm not a minimalist yet, but I strive to be. So you, as my witness and my support, let's look at my and maybe your way out. So is minimalism the answer? So when I first even figured out what minimalism was one night I was watching Netflix, and I come up on the Minimalist documentary, and was enamored by it. Was really kind of maybe started to make some sense to me. They actually have a new documentary out as well. So if you, I encourage you to go look at that as well on Netflix. So let's talk about and ask ourselves, what is minimalism? So first thing I would look at is, let's go to the dictionary. Let's see what the actual dictionary of minimal or minimalism is. And the definition of minimal is referring to or being a minimum, such as the least possible a victory won with a minimal loss of life. Okay. Barely adequate, a minimal standard of living. It's like, ooh, that doesn't sound very appetizing. Or a very small or slight, a minimal interest in art. are talking about art or minimalism, but so maybe a definition or dictionary definition is not the best place to start. So one of the favorite quotes is by Colin Wright, is what minimalism is all about is reassessment of your priorities so that you can strip away the excess stuff, the possessions, the ideas, the relationships and activities that don't bring value to your life. And then the minimalist from the Minimalist documentary, minimalism is a tool to rid yourself of life success in favor of focusing on what's important so you can find happiness, fulfillment, and freedom. So let's talk about what higher education and society tells us. Do more with less. That's obviously what COVID's taught us as academic advisors, and was teaching us before that, but it came more poignant during COVID. You can sleep when you're dead. Seize the day, carpe diem. You can't have it all. Look at what Mr. or Ms. Jones is doing or has. And the American dream can be earned and purchased at IKEA. So let's talk about the essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less. And this comes from Greg McKeown's book on essentialism. And this book speaks to me because have you ever found yourself stretched too thin? Most of us can probably say yes. Do you sometimes feel overworked and underutilized? Do you feel motion sickness instead of momentum? Does your day sometimes get hijacked by somebody else's agenda? Have you ever said yes simply to please and then resented it? If you answered yes to any of these, essentialism may be your answer. So I want to talk about essentialism versus non-essentialism. And the non-essentialism thinks that they have to be all things to all people. I have to, it's all important. How can I fit it all in? The essentialist thinks less is better. I choose to. Only a few things really matter. What are the trade-offs? The non-essentialist does this. The undisciplined pursuit of more. They react to what's most pressing. They say yes to people without really thinking. They try to force execution at the last moment. The essentialist has a disciplined pursuit of less. They pause to discern what really matters. They say no to everything except the essential. They remove obstacles to make execution easy. The non-essentialist gets a life that does not satisfy. They take on too much and work suffers. They feel out of control. They feel it is unsure or whether is unsure of whether the right things get done. Feels overwhelmed and exhausted. Whereas the essentialist lives a life that really matters. They choose carefully in order to do great work. They feel in control. They get the right things done, and they experience joy in the journey. Again, that comes from Greg McKeown's book on essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. So there's a few leading minimalists out there. And there's more. You go on YouTube, you go out on the internet, there's all kinds of them. These are the ones I've found lately kind of speak to me. Joshua Becker does a thing called becomingminimalist.com. The minimalist who did those two things on Netflix, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus. They also have a podcast. They have 5 or 6 books now, and they're at theminimalist.com. I utilize their stuff all the time. Greg McKeown, which we just discussed. Marie Kondo, also on Netflix, and has a couple books out there as well. And then Courtney Carver, we'll talk about her a little bit more on her Project 333. She's the most controversial one of the bunch here. So let's talk about your values. What are your primary tasks at work? Some things you have to define. Have you articulated a personal and a professional philosophy, a professional advising philosophy? What really matters in both your personal life and your professional life? If you haven't done so, I encourage you to do so. And the other question you need to ask yourself, are you living your values personally and professionally? As Joshua Fields Millburn says, you're only as strong as your weakest value. One of the things I know is out there is talking about mental load, and I know a lot of it refers to women and the load. I know my wife. After I heard this term, I recognized it both in my wife on how much stuff you get mental load based on how much things you're taking on. And I also think that we all have a little bit of mental load on that. And it's not until I started to learn this term, I started like, too many things to do, too much clutter can leave us feeling stressed, anxious, tired, and overwhelmed. And we go home in the weekend and we're sitting there, oh, I really need to mow the lawn, clean up the garage, and do a bunch of other stuff instead of just relaxing and enjoying what we like to do. So too much stuff and too many different things to do can add to our mental load, which gets us stressed, anxious, and tired and overwhelmed. Talking about the best word in the English language, no. One of the things you want to look at as far as what Ryan Nicodemus says is look at being overwhelmed like a flashing yellow light. Use caution when saying yes to others and to tasks. Busy for the sake of busy is by definition unfocused, which makes it impossible for us to discern what matters most among the blur. And then don't just say no for the sake of no. Be clear on what you're saying yes to. The internet. Have you ever sat and thought, and what would you accomplish if you said no more often to the internet, social media, and your phone? I would imagine we could learn languages, we could do all kinds of different things, we could enjoy more things. So it's one of the things I've been trying to do is to put the phone down, not even bring it with me a lot of times, and just stop the scroll on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're doing as you're going through. So saying no to the internet's a big piece of this. So stuff is really part of the problem. So we're talking about physical items. Clutter affects your life. Clutter can lead to, and stuff can lead to weight issues. You cannot relax if you're dealing with moving and cleaning your stuff, like I said earlier. Clutter can be stressful. Not all clutter is physical. Overconsumption is killing the earth. Getting a new wardrobe all the time, fast fashion, etc., is really killing the earth. We can still be miserable after buying our stuff. So that you get that brand new iPhone, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Or the brand new car, and you're like, oh, this is great. You smell the car, and then it starts to fade, and the amount of appreciation you get of that new thing fades as you go along. We go into debt to buy the stuff we don't need. And a lot of times we buy the stuff we don't need to impress the people we don't even like. Joshua Fields Millburn, one of the minimalists, says, the less we let in, the less we have to let go. So some solutions for your physical stuff. Now, this is a little bit controversial in a little bit in some ways, especially as we get closer down to on the list. Most of the stuff comes from the minimalists, except for the last item. So the 90-90 rule. So you look at a possession, pick anything, something. Have you used this item in the last 90 days? If you haven't, we'll use it in the next 90. If not, it's okay to let go. Then there's a 20-20 rule. Basically, anything you can get rid of anything that anything that we get rid of that we truly need, we can replace for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes from our current location. So if I think I can get rid of something, and then, oh, I really could have used that, 6 months down the road. If it's less than $20 and less than 20 minutes to get it from our current location, it's okay to let it go. And it's not a big deal. And you're probably not going to be able to, not going to have to use that very much in this, as you go through. Scanning party. You can scan your photos and documents, put them up on the cloud. If a house fire burns your house down tonight, all that stuff is gone. If you scan it and upload it, then it's out there and you actually still have it. And that also allows you and frees you to get rid of a lot of it. So having a scanning party and scanning stuff in is great. Okay, packing party. This is where it gets a little more scary. Basically, a packing party is where you box all your stuff up like you're moving and only take out what you need. and you likely will not miss the rest, and then eventually you can just donate or get rid of it. I did that in my office when COVID hit. I packed up my office, took it home, and what I have not opened, I've just gone ahead and got rid of because I just didn't need it. It was just the physical stuff in my office that was not needed. The 30-day challenge game, which is really great. You find somebody to play it with you, or you can play it alone. Basically, you get rid of one item on the first day. So October 1st, get rid of one item. October 2nd, get rid of 2 items. On October 10th, you get rid of 10 items. Eventually, when you get to the end of the month, when you're getting rid of 30 or 31 items, you can get rid of almost 500 items in your possession in a month. And you can play that with somebody, and whoever goes all the way through the month or whoever goes longest wins. And then Project 333, which is probably what I say is most controversial one for a lot of folks here. Project 333 is basically Courtney Carver's concept, and she actually did this for over a year. Basically, you have 33 items of clothing that you can use for 3 months. So basically, you can only use 33 items of clothing, and she did that for a whole entire year. But she's saying for 3 months, and honestly, people just don't notice that you're wearing very similar stuff or same stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I love to wear a blue polo, usually School of Chemical Sciences polo, and khakis or some kind of pants every day. And I have several different shirts that I rotate and pants that I rotate out. But it just cuts down on the choice fatigue and decision fatigue that comes up. So it's an awesome way of going at it as well. And you probably don't need as much clothes as you have. So in 2017, Lanson and White had a presentation also on minimalism, and they had a great action plan. And this is normally where I'd have you share with a colleague. If you want to email me, I will try to connect you with another person who's also wanting to discuss things with as far as minimalism. But what is one goal you have to practice minimalism and essentialism? So these are things you can ask yourself. Who can help you achieve this goal and hold you accountable? What is one commitment that doesn't add value that you can get rid of? And then identify strategies to help you get started this week, this month, this year. One of the things I've noticed is you can't go too cheap. So sometimes you have to spend more to get less. Sometimes the trouble with minimal living is that though it can be joyful, rich, and creative, it isn't always easy, and we often have to spend more to achieve it. So if I buy a bunch of cheap shoes, whereas if I just bought one pair of good shoes, they will last me longer. And same goes with like computers, phones, TVs, cars in some cases, computers. Sometimes you have to go a little bit more than just the bottom basement cheap stuff in order to practice good minimalism. So one of the things that I've also had to look at when I was looking at my life is not paying for what you don't use. So basically, talking about paying for what you don't use, I had 2 different health clubs or gyms that I was paying for. One on campus that had a pool that I was going to be swimming in, and then I had one I go with my wife with, and I didn't go to the one on campus for several years. I ended up still paying for it. During COVID, I actually turned it off. Same thing with my local gym, because I can work out outside during the summer, and during COVID, it just wasn't good. But if you're not paying for it, whether it's if you're not paying for Hulu, or you're not using Hulu or Netflix, something like that, get rid of it. So minimize what you only pay for what you use would be a good idea. So talking about easy access on your desktop, including at work, having an uncluttered desktop. It's really good for students not to come in and see you have piles of papers and books, things like that. These days, you can put files easily accessible in the cloud. I know my school has Box at Illinois, so basically I have unlimited the ability to put stuff up in the cloud for that. And I'm still trying to figure out what they mean by unlimited, but we'll see from that. Google Drive's another good one. I think you got 15 gigabytes without paying more on that. Amazon Photos, Google Photos are also a great place to upload your stuff and just out of your physical space. While electronic clutter can be bad, things in the cloud I think are better than physical clutter. Just kind of a good note here is to get more of out of the tools than the tools get out of you. One of the things I've gone on is a great unsubscription plan. So I basically tried to unsubscribe from a lot of the almost junk mail I get on my email. I've tried to cut down on how many apps I have on my phone, which helps me not have to check my phone all the time. And so, get more out of the tools. So I have the tools that I really use on my phone, but nothing more. So everybody's saying this is all great. We're all great. We love the environment. We love, it's awesome idea to be a minimalist or trying to do some minimalizing things in your life. But what does this have to do with advising? I'm glad you asked. So the Minimalist Advisor leads by example. So like I said, an office that's not overly cluttered, a life that's not, I can't meet with you right now. I've got 20 million other things to do. Leading by example in your life. Combating the pursuit of the accumulation of parchment. This is a term that I kind of coined that a lot of my students come in and they want to do 1 or 2 majors, 3 majors in some cases. Minors, they want minors. Give me a certificate. Let me accumulate as much parchment as I can get while I'm here. And trying to talk to them about, and kind of using a minimalist mindset of talking to them about kind of the hierarchy of experiences in college. You don't have to major in everything to have a great career and have a great life. You don't have to have even the highest paying job to have a great life. Talking about the hierarchy of experiences in college, what I try to talk to my students is, obviously in like for my chemical engineers, having the degree is important. You have to have a degree to be a chemical engineer. Right below that's a GPA. If you have a 2.5 GPA, you're not going to have as great of a job possibilities as you if you've had 3.5. So getting your highest GPA as you can is important. But then more than minors, more than other experiences, which are great and they're fine. And if a student wants and has the ability to do so, I'm more than happy to help them with that. But look at getting internships and co-ops, because that really is one of the big things that employers are looking for. Looking at research with professors, looking at really quality volunteerism, things of that nature. Nothing's wrong with minors studying abroad, getting certificate. Student groups, things like that. Those are all awesome. They're great base to your college career, but it's not necessarily, the hierarchy of your experiences, and particularly the trying to get multiple majors and overloading and just trying to push everything into their academic 4-year career, or if they happen to go to 5 years, even worse. Is trying to teach that minimalist mindset for folks to take a look at. So ways of minimalist advising. Fewer, more meaningful projects, saying no to certain things, letting other folks have their opportunity. One of the things I've noticed as a more experienced advisor now, as it's hard for me to kind of realize that, is letting other folks take the reins on certain projects and certain things. Is really important, but making sure those projects are fewer but meaningful. Back to the basics. Sometimes it's just about not creating all this stuff, but it's about that conversation you have with a student. It's about the relationships you have with some of these students. Getting back to really, working on interacting with students. Getting back to the basics of why you got into the profession. Basing everything on your values and passions, going back to and if you've already written one, going back and revising or reevaluating your academic advising philosophy, your personal philosophy, and making what you say yes to based on your values and passions. Reduce clutter and consumption, both in personal life and in your work life. Eat better, something I'm working on. It's a work in progress, but definitely trying to have a more healthy, minimalist lifestyle and eating better and not getting stressed out by stuff, clutter, and doing too much and getting overwhelmed, stress eating, etc. And then help those who need it most. Sometimes some students and some groups don't need as much help as some others do. So make sure you're looking at, who needs the most help and saying yes to them more than the folks that don't need as much. So let's talk about a minimalist advising sheet. And this is what, normally people, oh, this is an awesome advising sheet. I actually created some over my time here. And so we talk about, minimalism and working with a student and kind of coming in with a blank slate and kind of, instead of me working with what I think they should be talking about, is working with what they want to talk about. So minimalist advising sheet. So, and you can welcome to steal this sheet all you want. Let's take a look at our minimalist advising sheet. This is my minimalist advising sheet. It's blank, yes. Normally it's a kind of an email to the student, because I end up usually just emailing it to the student, starting off that, and then cutting and pasting into my notes. But it's the most beautiful thing in the world. But Todd, it's blank. Of course, but it's not blank. It has millions of possibilities. So let's look at it. Let's meet with a student. So a student, let's see here. So a student comes in, they say, I want to declare a minor. Okay, well, let's talk about minors. Why you want to declare a minor? What do you want to get out of a minor? And so we start looking at it. We decide we talk about different minors, and I usually include a link to different minor requirements or whatever we need to do for the minor. We can also look at, advising tutoring resources, either struggling with class, things like that. So we have a website that we have different tutoring resources that are for our students. And so we can definitely talk to them about that and make sure they have a link to the resources. Time management. Let's say, come in and talk about time management. So here's a time management calculator. Maybe we'll even go over the time management calculator with them. Definitely talk about those kind of things. Scholarships. I need help paying for school, and this has happened a lot lately for us. It's like, well, here's the different scholarships, both on campus and the personal, the ones in the School of Chemical Sciences, but also in other ones that come up periodically. So they talk about, you basically have additional notes. And you can also still talk about classes. So we can definitely put in the classes that we talk about and what kind of classes they may want to take for next semester, or have to take in some cases, especially in chemistry or chemical engineering. Sometimes it's relatively prescriptive as far as what they have to do to complete the degree and what semester they have to do it in. But you can definitely talk about those things as well. And it gets to the core of what they're looking at, and then you can send that to them. Then they have the resource, they have the links if they need to for that purpose. We have several different resources that you can look through, and some photo sources. One of the quotes that I think is one of the most poignant is, love people and use things, because the opposite never works, from the minimalists. So normally we'd open this up to questions and discussion. Feel free to email me if you have any questions or want to discuss anything. I'm more than open to talking with you. If you are going to Cincinnati or at Cincinnati, feel free to touch base and check in with me if you want to while I'm at NACADA. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure talking to you. This is the most awkward presentation I think I've ever done, since there's not much interaction like that. So hopefully it was informative to you and allow you to kind of think about what you're doing with your own academic and minimalism journey. Thank you very much.